When I left the hospital, a deep sadness washed over me. It wasn't just because of the pain or fear, but because the place held an incredible beauty. No one understood when I said I wished I could stay there. But it's the truth. I went there. I left my body behind, leaving everything else, and I came home. When I was brought back, I was clearly broken. Words can't fully capture everything I felt there, especially the love. It's very different from the love we usually talk about. It's something that can't be put into words. It was as if everything, absolutely everything, was made of pure love. And when I returned, I was no longer the same. My mind no longer worked the same way. I felt life in a new way. I saw it through different eyes, and at that moment, I understood. My mission was now to share what I had experienced. That's my role today. Hello, I'm Bryan Jordan from Slidell, Louisiana. My father worked as a long-haul truck driver and owned a massive 18-wheeler. He mostly transported gravel, and from a young age, I was involved in that work, helping out every step of the way. By the time I was 8 or 9, my brother and I were already changing tires like pros. When my father came home, we'd make the necessary repairs together. By 13, I was already driving the truck, and at 15, I was rolling down the road with over 36 tons. To be honest, we grew up fast, becoming men before we were even teenagers. I was never the partying type or someone who hung out with friends all the time. We were just working. When I finished high school, I was still too young to get my commercial driver's license. You had to be 21. So I joined the army at 19 and ended up in Germany. I trained as a paratrooper at Fort Benning. I spent 3 years there, and in my final year, I was in Korea. After 6 years of service, I came home proud and started working with my dad again. He had found a new job, and that's when I began operating heavy machinery. I really enjoyed it, you know, digging, moving dirt, drilling holes. The power of those machines fascinated me. From that moment on, I never wanted to do anything else. My whole life revolved around it. I even worked 21 consecutive days, 12 hours each day, without any breaks. My entire world was just work. One of the projects I worked on was in Pratt, Kansas. We were in the process of building a wind farm. Those large wind turbines you see. It was a Saturday and we needed to finish early. I got up, headed to the site, and started my day on my tractor. I took a break around noon. I always brought a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, my quick lunch. I ate and then went back to work. It must have been around 12:10 when I felt a strange sensation, an intense pressure in my neck that started to worry me. I thought it would pass, but it didn't. I kept working, but the pain only got worse. I shut off the tractor and climbed down. The pain gradually spread to my chest. I went straight to talk to the tanker truck driver and asked him to take me to the medical staff. Once there, I walked in and asked to see Tom's. I said this because I had felt that pain before. A year earlier, while I was working in North Dakota, I had a chest pain like a horse kick in the middle of a call with my girlfriend. I told her, "My chest hurts," and she knew I wasn't the type to complain. So she immediately called 911 and hung up. When I placed my hand on my neck to check my pulse, my heart was beating completely irregularly. It was total chaos. At the hospital, they told me it was just acid reflux. A year later, I thought it was the same thing. That's why I asked for tests. She prescribed me aspirin and some tests and told me to take a seat. As I sat down, I started to feel pain in my arm. At that moment, I realized the situation was getting serious. Fatigue washed over me quickly, and I knew I was about to lose consciousness. At the moment, I started to fall. The head of security was standing right in front of me. The last thought that crossed my mind was, I hope he catches me. I couldn't imagine my face hitting the ground, and then everything went black. Suddenly, I was surrounded by stars. At first, I thought I was fainting or dreaming. I told myself, just another one of those strange dreams. But this didn't feel like a dream. I was in a vast space like a huge cave. The walls descended to where the ground should have been, but there was no earth. It was like looking at the night sky, except I was looking downward, and I realized I was floating. Where the ground should have been, a path made of square stones stretched out, seeming to hang in the air. Turning right, I saw the path extend, take a turn, and disappear. Looking left, I spotted a wall about 30 meters away, where an enormous door adorned with a classic arch from an ancient castle stood. Now, when I mention a cave, many immediately picture hell, darkness, and fear, yet there was no fear there, none. At no point did I feel afraid. Then I turned my gaze back to the door and noticed a figure over there. It was a still shape staring straight ahead, lost in utter madness, and I could sense its presence. It looked like a ghost, almost translucent. Yet, we locked eyes. I should have felt terror, right? But instead, I was as curious as a cat. I thought I had to find out who it was. And the moment that thought crossed my mind, boom, I took off like a rocket. I was moving so fast that the outlines blurred. When I stopped right in front of the wall, I was stunned. My God, humans don't move like that. How did I do that? Then I realized I had come here to understand that figure. I looked down, and it continued to float slowly along the stone path. But it didn't look at me. It simply drifted away until it disappeared. From that moment on, everything turned into complete darkness, total blackness. I couldn't even see my own hand. And then, in the middle of that void, a light appeared. It looked like a flashlight searching for something until its beam touched me. The light was so bright that even without a physical form, I instinctively tried to shield my eyes with my hands. At that moment, the light surrounded me. Inside, its intensity and glare softened, becoming gentle. I looked around, up and down. Everything was made of that soothing and comforting light. Slowly, the front of the light turned into mist, like a light fog. And that fog cleared to reveal a blue sky. At that moment, I felt an indescribable emotion. It was as if God, in all his power, was embracing me. A love so deep, so overwhelming, it felt like electricity flowing through every part of me, but it wasn't painful. It was as if every part of my being was being touched. The love was on a completely different level. A love never felt on earth before, powerful, intense, and divine. Then words began to appear before me. First, forgiveness. Then, love. And finally, peace. The moment I read, peace, I was once again wrapped in the light opening up before me. As I passed through this light, I experienced a strange sensation. The Bryan I knew was left behind. Yet this didn't bother me. It was as if my soul was aware of everything that was still to come. No negative thoughts, no doubts, no fears. It felt like my mind was pure clear, like wind flowing directly through me. Up there, in that light, I had no worries. Everything seemed possible. I felt so good, so light. I felt like I could accomplish anything, and I truly believed it. Then, I began to float down through the sky until I found myself near majestic evergreens. You know those fir trees with fine needles, right? I could see each one clearly. None escaped my sight. It was as if my eyes had become super cameras. Then I glided down between the trees and watched the roots plunge into the ground until my body turned and I began to float on my back. At that moment, I realized I was standing on the edge of a cliff reminiscent of those along the California coast, dropping straight into the ocean. Leaning over the cliff's edge, I looked down and saw a garden, but it wasn't an ordinary garden. The flowers were enormous, about the size of dining tables, bursting with life and energy. It felt as though they were watching me, even in God's absence. I could sense their full attention on me, and if I wanted to see a flower up close, all I had to do was think about it. And just like that, it happened. I focused my mind. I moved slowly to the side, wrapped in love. What radiated from those flowers was exactly that. They were alive, and here I am. I see you. Then suddenly, it disappeared so abruptly it left a mark in the air, and I kept staring until the last trace faded away. Everything vanished suddenly. I opened my eyes. My paramedic was above me, giving chest compressions. I looked up at her and said, "Hello." She stared at me as if she'd seen a ghost. Her eyes were wide open. "What's going on?" I asked. She said, "Bryan, your heart stopped. You died." I was shocked. How long was I unconscious? I asked. She replied, 4 to 5 minutes. 5 minutes? How is that possible? It felt like I lived through all that. The sky, the cave, the garden, the lights, for at least an hour. But only 5 minutes had really passed. Honestly, when she told me that, I couldn't believe it. Looking down, I noticed my shirt was torn, patches stuck to my chest, and a device next to me was making noise. That's when reality started to hit me. Struggling, the only thing I could manage to say was, "Get me off this ground." They lifted me up, but my arm was burning. I started sweating profusely, as if I were soaked through. My colleagues, my superiors, they were all there leaning on each other. The walls stared back at me, not knowing what to do, while I sweated, wishing to fall asleep as if my body wanted to give in. But every time I looked at them, they would look away. It was as if they couldn't bear to face it, to see someone alive but on the brink of death. Then someone mentioned a helicopter. Hearing that, I joked, "Oh no, I'm going to have to spend the rest of my life paying this bill." I managed to get them to smile, and honestly, I had already seen so much on the other side that fear was no longer there. They were worried, but I wasn't. I was the one cracking jokes to lighten the mood. The ambulance arrived, but the nearest hospital was over 120 kilometers away. So they loaded me up and hooked me to medical devices. Then I fainted again, but this time I left my body once more. And when I say I left, I mean it quite literally. I was standing next to my body. I looked at it and didn't recognize it. My face was turned to the side, eyes closed, and I was watching the scene without understanding. It didn't really feel like me. I was observing my body as if it were just an object, something harmless. In my first out-of-body experience, I had lost that connection. So the second experience began with the same sensation, and there I discovered a new landscape filled with flowers. Many flowers. But it wasn't an ordinary garden. It was a vast circle with different arrangements of flowers separated by color, shape, and type. And suddenly, I understood. Without anyone explaining it to me, I knew what it symbolized. These flowers represented us human beings. Each group stood for an ethnicity, black, white, Asian, each with its own colors, roots, and unique traits, yet all united within the same circle, united as one. It moved me deeply because despite our differences, we are all part of the same whole. And isn't it ironic? Down here we fight, we divide, we judge. But up there, where everything makes sense, no one is left out of the circle. Exclusion doesn't exist. After that, I found myself once again in space, this time in front of a blue planet, a blue so deep and vibrant that nothing like it exists down here. It was as if the colors were 1,000 times more intense, more alive. The deep blue had something hypnotic about it. I also experienced other fleeting vision scenes that flashed by quickly, but I don't remember all the details very well. It all happened so fast, with such intensity. It was a whirlwind of images. Then, suddenly, I found myself back in my body in the ambulance. As I opened my eyes, everyone around me had gathered, looking at me with expressions of amazement. I asked, "What happened?" One of the doctors replied, "We had to give you a shock." Shortly after, I heard the sound of the approaching helicopter. They placed me inside and flew me to Wichita, Kansas. As soon as we arrived at the hospital, a team was already waiting to receive me. They were shouting, "It's a blockage. It looks like a blockage." Then they started pushing me through the halls like in the movies. You know, the lights flashing above me, everything moving very fast. They took me straight to the operating room. They ripped off what was left of my clothes and began preparing me. I remember lying on the table shivering from the cold, my arms straight down by my sides. But when I opened my eyes, my arms were raised above my head. A man was standing to my left, working beside me. I said to him, "Hi." He replied, "Hi." I asked, "Weren't my arms down by my sides?" He laughed and said, "Didn't you feel it? When we gave you the shock, your body almost lifted off the table." I then asked, "Am I going to die today?" He looked at me seriously and replied, "No, and I'm here to make sure that doesn't happen. They managed to stabilize you." The doctor walked into the room, saw me sitting up and widened his eyes. "My God, you should have been intubated by now. You just had a major heart attack. Your heart is in distress, and here you are, chatting as if nothing happened. You shouldn't even be able to speak at this moment." I was immediately transferred to intensive care. A nurse came in with a stack of paperwork, started going through it, then paused, fixing me with a steady gaze as she said, "My God, you have what's called a life-threatening heart attack." She explained that this type of heart attack has only a 10% chance of survival even in a hospital. And yet, here I am alive. I should have died that day. Because of this, I was fitted with a vest, a portable defibrillator. If my heart were to falter again, it would deliver a shock on its own. At that time, my heart was functioning at 30%, maybe 35%, while the normal level is 55%. I wore that vest for 3 months. When I returned to the hospital for a checkup, I thought it was just a routine visit. But barely had I stepped out when the doctor called me back. "You can get rid of the vest, Bryan. Your heart is in perfect condition," he added. "Since the 1970s, we've been studying this type of heart attack, and so far, you are the only other person who has fully recovered at 100%. There's just a scar on your heart from the shock. Your heart now beats just like mine does. You are a miracle." Hearing that, I realized something. I was no longer the same. I had overcome my fear of death. I always tell my loved ones, "Don't cry for me, and please don't pray for me to come back, because after what I've been through, I just want to stay here." After my discharge from the hospital, I fell into a depression. No one really understood why, but I did. That place was my real home. I left that body behind and went back home. However, I had to return. It's indescribable what I felt there, and above all, that love. It can't be described with human words. It's a different kind of love. That's why I sought out others who had similar experiences. I spent an entire year reading testimonies about near-death experiences, studying, and connecting with those who had already been through this. I met many people who shared my feelings. Everything centers around love. When I heard this from so many sources, I realized I wasn't crazy. I understood that I had a mission. Telling my story is now my purpose. I came back, yes, but I am different. My mind works differently now than most people's. I grew up in a very strict church, one that teaches that without the Holy Spirit and strict obedience to every biblical text, you can't hope for heaven. Yet I came close to death 3 times. 3 times. And each time I didn't see hell, not at all. What I felt was divine. I felt connected to something immense. You see, I'm just an ordinary person. I wasn't a regular churchgoer, but I've always believed in God since I was a child. However, despite my faith, doubts remained. Why would God be so angry? Why would he place us here? Then set so many rules to leave this world. It never made sense. After I came back, my perspective changed completely. Today, I no longer judge anyone based on their religion. There was a time when I accepted everything I was taught without question. So how could I judge someone based on beliefs shaped by their upbringing? The truth is, many truly understand only after crossing over, but since my return, my way of seeing people has changed. I no longer see faces, names, or labels. I only see souls, and that's how I see the world now. Above all, I see love. It's impossible to describe with human words. It's a different kind of love. That's why I began searching for others like me. I spent a whole year reading accounts of near-death experiences, studying and connecting with people who had gone through similar experiences. Many said exactly what I had experienced myself. Everything revolves around love. And when I heard this truth from so many sources, I realized I wasn't crazy. I realized I had a purpose to share my story. That's my mission now. Yes, I came back changed. My mind doesn't work like most people's anymore. I grew up in a very strict church, one of those that say, if you don't have the Holy Spirit and don't obey every single word of the Bible, you'll never get to heaven. And yet, I died 3 times. 3. And each time, I never saw hell. Not at all. What I experienced was divine. I felt part of something much greater. And remember, I'm just an ordinary person. I wasn't a regular churchgoer, but I've always believed in God since I was a child. Yet, despite my faith, I had doubts. Why would God be so angry? Why does He put us here? And why impose so many rules to leave this world? It never made sense. After my return, I began to see everything differently. Today, I no longer judge anyone based on their religion, because once I too blindly believed everything I was taught. How could I then judge someone for their beliefs, shaped by their upbringing? The truth is, many don't understand until they transcend to another dimension. But after my return, I stopped seeing people literally. I no longer saw faces, names, or labels. I only saw souls. And this is how I see the world today. Everyone I meet along my path, I consider a soul. A person who is searching, struggling in pain, or learning just like me. That's where my perspective changed completely. The way I treat others, how I listen, the way I offer help. Today, I try to assist anyone I can, not expecting anything in return. After what I went through, it became clear nothing ordinary holds real value. Money, status, possessions, all lose meaning once you realize none of it follows you. I used to worry about trivial things, small concerns, passing annoyances, things that stole my peace. Now I try to free myself from those worries. I'm still learning to handle these challenges, of course, but the truth is simple. Help others whenever and however you can. That's all God asks from us. We are here for that, to take care of one another, to support those who fall, to listen, to welcome. And if you haven't yet figured out how to do that, what else do you hope to accomplish in this life? In the end, it all comes down to this: human warmth, empathy, compassion. That's what truly matters. Everything else is just passing.